Welcome, everybody. Dr. Josh Long here with AME Podcast, my quest to look into folks who have participated beyond the classroom and make music and what I call lifelong learning and music education. This thing of, continuing to play your instrument or sing beyond the classroom. We are sponsored by our business, Art and Music Emporium, serving artistic excellence. We do things such as fix instruments, we do lessons, and we also do a few performance initiatives depending on when you're watching this. End of July, we do our annual community band by the sea in Wildwood, New Jersey. And we're actually doing a new one here in 2024 called the Bethlehem Steel Company Legacy Band, which is actually going to happen down in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at Music Fest in August, beginning of August. And both of those groups we kind of create with folks who are interested in coming out and playing. They rehearse the day before, and then after that day, we actually have a concert. I also do other things such as tuba Christmases. So there's always times and places to play. So if you're interested, check out www.artmusicemporium.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel, as well as on Facebook. You can like Art Music Emporium or Joshua E. Long, which is myself. And we also have a Patreon account, which all the proceeds go again to people making lifelong music in education. I'm so excited about this next guest. I actually got to work with him for a few years, and he is one of the greats who will talk about a lot of band history, knows a lot about bands, has been around a lot of different community bands, as well as helped in the band movement. He was a public school teacher, college band director, a school of the music department chair. And now he's retiring and moving on to bigger and better things in his life. I know he's going to probably continue making music. I know we talked about that. And so, everybody, please welcome Art Himmelberger. How are you doing, Art?
No, I'm doing great. How are you, Josh?
Doing great. Yeah, thank you.
Good.
And thank you so much for being on this. It's a lot of fun to talk to, fellow colleagues about this, on this side. So I thought maybe we'd start a little bit, if you wouldn't mind discussing a little bit about your history of music, how you kind of got involved. I know and I don't want to be smart here. I know it was a while ago, but I'm just interested of your interest in making music. If we could start there.
Okay. Well, it's a long life of associated with bands. Uh, Believe it or not, the whole story starts when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
My father was president of a community band in Pennsylvania. It was known as the Keystone Band of Raresburg. And in order to get me out of the house and give my mother some free time, he would take me to band rehearsals on Thursday nights. He made a bench for me, and he told me to sit on that bench behind the percussion section during rehearsals and listen. And if you sit there and be good, when we take a break, I'll get you Canada Dry mint ginger ale. So I sat there real quiet, listening to the band rehearse until I got my mint ginger ale. And then to get me to be quiet for the second half of the rehearsal, the band promised to play my favorite song, which was How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? So I started listening to community bands, as I said earlier, when I was 2 years old. And I ended up playing with that band when I was 9 years old because
Oh,
I
wow.
started taking percussion lessons at the age of 4. My father was a percussionist, and so we kind of lived in the house of drums, so to speak. Um, so it all started there. My music career did not start typically in the fourth grade when people get instruments, but rather it started with community bands at a very early age. When I got to fourth grade to play instruments through the school program,
Mhm.
they laid out all the instruments in front of us, and I came home and said to my dad, I want to learn to play an instrument. And he said, "Oh," he says, "Well, what do you want to learn to play?" And I said, "I want to learn to play the trumpet." And he said, "My son, you don't understand. You already do play an instrument. You are a drummer. And as long as you live in this house, you will continue to be a drummer." Uh, so I started out with this community band, Keystone Band of Raresburg, started playing with them when I was 9 years old. And I took private lessons from some excellent percussion teachers.
Hmm.
One of them, his name was George Haller in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then I studied with William Shinstein in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Uh, and they got me to a point where I could audition for county, district, and region bands in Pennsylvania. Um, and I was successful at auditioning and spent many years playing in county, district, and region bands through my high school experience. During that same period, I played with the Ringgold Band in Reading, which
Hmm.
is the famous band that their claim to fame is it's the band that killed Sousa, so to speak, because it was the last band that Sousa ever conducted in March of 1932.
Okay.
Um, I also played with community bands known as the Cadet Band. And the Cadet Band was a professional band in Reading, but it had its roots as a boys' band.
Oh.
And if you know that when Sousa arrived at the train station in Reading to
Hmm.
uh, conduct a rehearsal and concert the weekend that he did pass,
Hmm.
Sousa got off the train and the cadet band was standing there at the station, all boys at the time,
Okay.
uh, playing the high school cadets,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
the Sousa's March High School Cadets. And so the cadet band has the privilege of playing the last performance because
Hmm.
Sousa came out of the train and started with the baton conducting the band. So that the cadet band was the last band that played under Sousa in a live performance. The Ringgold band only got to the rehearsal, and then Sousa died the night after that rehearsal.
Hmm.
Um, I also played with I got, the memory is quite important to me right now to remember all these bands.
Yeah.
There was the Patriot Band of Centerport, Pennsylvania. I played
Okay.
with them. And there was also the Philharmonic Band of Reading, and I performed with them. And then there was also the Allentown Band, and I ended up performing with them. So I had a great experience as a high school student playing with all these wonderful community bands and also a very wonderful high school band, and then the honor bands that
Yeah.
come along with that process. Um, I ended up going to the University of Michigan because I wanted to study with the band conductor, Dr. William D. Revelli.
Hmm.
And I learned so much from him. I was accepted into his symphony band and marching band when I was a freshman at Michigan. And to get into the symphony band as a freshman was quite a monumental task. I was very fortunate. And I ended up uh, furthering my percussion studies with Jim Salmon, who is a member of the Percussive Arts Society Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
John Heaney, who is the last xylophone soloist of the Sousa band. Roy Knapp, who had uh, a studio in Chicago, and I would once a month take a train ride from Ann Arbor, Michigan to Chicago to study private lessons with Roy Knapp, who also, by the way, was the teacher of Gene Krupa.
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm.
so Roy was one of the famous teachers of percussion instruments in the Chicago area. Um, so then I had the experience of the Michigan bands, toured throughout this country with the Michigan Symphony Band. played in 2 Rose Bowl parades with the marching band, toured Europe with the Michigan Symphony Band, and ultimately was awarded a teaching fellowship as an undergraduate student. Instead of, it was a graduate fellowship, but it was awarded to me when I was going into my junior year. And that certainly helped out with the expenses of my education. So I'm glad I received that. After Michigan, I got caught up in the Vietnam draft scenario, where you were drafted by your birth date, and I ended up having a birth date that put me right into the draft uh, uh, situation.
Yep.
And so I auditioned for the United States Army Field Band,
Oh,
which
okay.
is the official touring band of the Army. And I performed in the field band for one hitch, 3.5 years, basically,
Okay.
traveling throughout the country. As I said before, the field band is the touring band of the Army.
Yeah.
I was stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland. Um, and from there, I got involved with public school teaching and taught the middle school band, excuse me, at Littlestown, Pennsylvania, which is in Adams County. And then I went on to the Cocalico High School Band in Lancaster County. And I kept on trying to get to a bigger and stronger music program. And finally went to the Governor Mifflin school band program. But at the time, music teaching and teaching in general, the salaries were not uh, commensurate with the cost of living.
Right.
And so I had to play 3 small symphony orchestras in the area to make ends meet. I played with the Reading Symphony Orchestra, the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra, and the Lancaster Symphony Orchestra, just to have enough money to keep food in the table and a roof over the family's head. Um, so I had my former commander in the Army Field Band was Hal Gibson,
Okay.
and Hal and I kept telephonically talking to each other often.
Okay.
And one day, Hal said to me, "Why don't you consider going to the West Point Band, which is the Army band, the professional Army band that's stationed at the military academy at West Point?" And I said, "Wow." I said, "How do I go about doing that?" And he says, "Well, you'll have to audition." He said, "But the commander of the West Point Band is looking for somebody to design halftime shows for Army football." And I said, "Well, I can do that." Uh, so I ended up making a pay increase by moving to West Point, and had a lovely house right at the academy,
Oh, wow.
because everybody in the band is housed on academy grounds. And it paid off in spades because my daughter ended up becoming a cadet at West Point and graduating very high academically in her class. So the move to West Point was very, very good for my family. Uh, while I was at West Point, I get a telephone call from Marist College suggesting that they were looking for a band director. And what I didn't realize at the time is that they didn't have a band, but they wanted a band director to start a band at Marist. And so I was a Army Black Knight, so to speak, because that's the mascot of Army football by day, and I was a Marist Red Fox by night, as I would travel up to Poughkeepsie, New York in the evenings and generated a music program. And so I retired from the Army in, I'm going to say 2002, and took over the music department at Marist College. at that time, and been been here. Actually, it was 1986 that I started as an adjunct professor at Marist.
Hmm.
So I've been here from 1986 until 2024, which I think
Yep.
is 38 years.
Yeah.
So that's basically been my career in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Well,
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's an amazing journey, hear all the different bands you're in, community bands, professional bands, school bands, college bands.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I had one real quick question as you're getting in there. And I mean, I know obviously I feel because you 2 years old, you were saying you would go with your dad to that community band, but what is it about music that kept you motivated to kind of stay in the profession? I mean, goodness gracious, you've gone since you were two all the way to where you are today, and continuing beyond that. Like, what was that motivation to keep you
Well,
involved with bands, I guess is the best way to say
I
it.
don't know. I think it's part my father had a plan, by getting me to those rehearsals, getting me to
Yeah.
listen, because I can sit here and say that bands are what I know best,
Yep.
and uh, it's just been uh, so very natural throughout my
Mhm.
entire life to have association with bands, and so much so that I'm still, to this day, director of a community band in the Albany, New York area, called the Colony Memorial Concert Band, and so that's been a continuation of everything that I shared prior.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just because it's really unique because, and the reason I say that is just because you kind of followed that path and it's becoming an intertwining of you. And I know you even went in beyond that and went in towards, like band history. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean,
Right.
we talk about this and I guess that's like kind of my next question for you is as far as you got involved with these bands and I know in the beginning you mentioned all the bands in Reading that are very important to you. What inspired you to kind of go towards that historical side of bands and learn about the band history, especially like you shared already about Sousa coming to Ringgold Band, you know what I mean? And that
Right.
was something I joke, when I worked with you, you would always quiz me on certain things because it's a very important part of your soul, you know?
Right. Well, I don't. When I used to go into the Ringgold band rehearsals,
Mhm,
their rehearsal hall is like a band museum,
mhm,
uh, because they're certainly one of the oldest bands in the country, and have a really wonderful history. So I think maybe that helped. And the Keystone Band, which is my first band,
mhm,
they were founded in 1888. So here I am, and the Allentown Band is the oldest band in America.
mhm,
Um, so here I am playing in rehearsal halls with band history all around me.
mhm,
And I think that just looking at the pictures and
mhm.
spurred interest in doing research on band history projects.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, it's just something. And I mean, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, if you haven't been in the Ringgold Band Hall, I mean, goodness gracious, I mean, there's pictures from the start of the group,
Right.
there where they're all around you from the different conductors, the different performers, the different concerts, and it's just a lot of different community bands have that, and I think that's important to know, that heritage of where these bands came from, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so as and this is something that I wanted to think about why we're on this kind of session of band history. And this is something that, one thing I think I'll know where you're going with this, but I don't know, and I never asked you this. So why do you think it's important to kind of learn about those different, band groups? And I'm not talking about, anything. I know there's weird things going on today. I'm talking about truly and knowing where the groups came from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you find most like either fascinating or most important as you as a music teacher, and through your path, as even as a performer, that's kind of helped you go
Okay.
through. You get where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Like going with this different style of, knowing the history and the traditions and all of those kind of things, rather, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, what you gotta remember is going back in history,
Mhm,
almost every town in America had their own town band,
mhm,
and the reason for that is you had no radio, you had no television, excuse me,
mhm,
you had no, way of recording music.
mhm.
Uh, in order to enjoy music, you had to either make it yourself, which back in the day, almost every household had a piano or some kind of a pump organ
Right.
in the parlor, and everybody could either sing or play an instrument. And if you were a daughter in the family, you learned to play the piano so that
Mhm,
you could play the piano while the family stood around the piano and sang.
yep,
It was a very musical America, and so live music was the only way that you got music.
mhm.
And I hope I'm getting to your answer.
Oh, you are. You are.
Okay, um, but every town having its own band
Mhm,
was so very, very important. I mean, it ended up the band members played at dances. They played concerts in the gazebo in the park, and played other concerts. But basically, the musicians, uh, especially the semi-professional musicians, because
mhm,
in many cases, once the musicians union stepped in, a lot of these musicians were paid to play,
mhm,
and uh, so you have that situation up to this very, very day.
mhm.
Um, so help me get back to the
Yeah, no, I was just getting to the importance of that history of all of
yeah,
that, and of that engagement. And I guess here I'll kind of ask another question. I think that'll influence a little bit. What I've always been interested in, interested in the history, but it's always about the community engagement. Because you just
yeah,
said it, it's like every town had a band,
yeah,
and or every, even like we're doing the Bethlehem Steel Company, we're calling it Legacy Band, but the steel
right,
plant had its own band. I mean, an
yeah,
actual job
yeah,
had its own band, and I find it interesting that people were doing all of that and just engage that way, where
right,
it's like it was this, and I'm not saying, I don't want to sound old, it's a different time, but it's like we go there and we see that of all these different groups, and just like you said, it was that form of entertainment. So I think,
yeah,
I'm trying to get at, like, kind of what people say about that and importance, especially as you is today, of kind of still sharing that and still offering that to others,
yeah,
because I don't know, I think it's important.
yeah. It's kind of interesting too. The town officials
Hmm.
understood the importance of their town band.
Yep.
And this was nationwide. As a matter of fact, many states uh, had laws
Hmm.
where tax dollars, local tax dollars, had to be spent on the local town band. Out in Iowa, it was known as the Iowa Band Law, of
Hmm.
which there is a march titled the Iowa Band Law.
Hmm.
Uh, and to this very day, uh, many communities in this nation of ours fund their community band. Probably one of the most significantly um, funded organizations is in Illinois, in Naperville. Uh,
Okay.
the Naperville Community Band has been going, I forget when they were founded, but money, taxpayer money, has been going on to support the Naperville, Illinois community band for
Hmm.
a long, long time. Even the community band that I conduct in Albany,
Hmm.
uh, it's in a small town called Colony, which is a suburb of Albany.
Okay.
But the Colony town board actually does some small funding
Hmm.
toward the Memorial Concert Band. As a matter of fact, they pay a stipend for me as a conductor.
Hmm.
I received from the town board. So tax dollars are going toward community band situations.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think that's amazing, and having people know that, just because that, just like you said, I think it was the golden age of bands, right? When every town wanted, a group, and
Right.
it exists today. It still does, but it's not
Yeah.
as
It,
predominant, I think, as it
it's not as
was.
vibrant as it
Yeah.
was. And I get concerned about that. Also, um, my high school experience, going back in time a little bit,
Uh-huh.
uh, I was in a very large high school band, and all the bands in our area were large bands.
Okay.
And this was a continuation of the school band movement, which occurred in the 1920s and 1930s,
Hmm.
where, as a matter of fact, Meredith Willson uh, got his idea for the Music Man Broadway musical through the school band movement that occurred back then. And so I was going to school in the 1960s,
Hmm.
and there was still this carryover of, every student played in a band. As a matter of fact, kids in my own high school, they played in the band, they played in the basketball team, they
Hmm.
played on the soccer team.
Yep.
They were involved in all kinds of clubs.
Yep.
You did it all, and you
Yep.
became a well-rounded person,
Yep.
uh, as compared to uh, just focusing on athletics or just focusing on
Right.
music. But I get concerned for the size of high school bands, generally speaking. I mean, there's
Yeah.
certainly extraordinary band programs all throughout this land,
Yeah. Right.
uh, but there are some school bands that are suffering and aren't
Hmm.
as vibrant as they were, say, 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I know, and that's that uptick, I would say, of, and nothing against sports or other activities or other things that are going on, but kind of the uptick with that has kind of brought some of the music programs down, and then of course funding's always an issue, as you know,
Right,
but it's like it's just. And I'm looking at this as the more engagement thing, because I think, it's kind of saddens me too, that we do see less in the schools, and then in the community we see even less.
right, right.
So
Yeah.
it's like, and I go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm an optimist, and certainly
Yeah.
there are those sectors of the
Yep.
country that bands are really, really, really big.
Yep.
The Southwest, you go down to Texas,
Yep.
and the school band programs there are just amazing. And you go to the Midwest, uh, where you have amazing programs, and then speckled around those areas are
Yep.
some extraordinary high school programs. As a matter of fact, the one here at Poughkeepsie, the Arlington High School Band, is absolutely a phenomenal organization. And to try to recruit students to come to Marist from Arlington, that's a real goal.
Yeah.
Uh, and so there are programs that are thriving, and so much of it has to do with the funding opportunities, and that's then also finding the really, really passionate and um, say really, I gotta be careful. Um, I'd say that they're really passionate and knowledgeable
Right.
music educators.
Yep. Mhm.
That's important. You find a passionate and well-educated music teacher,
Yep.
and the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't look at music teaching as a job, you got to look at it as a way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I know, and it's a we can sit here and talk until we're kind of call it blue in the face, right? About how great music is and what it does, and it drives provides creativity, and it provides all these being a citizen, and
right,
provides that community engagement, and it's hard because the ones of us who are in the programs, who are the teachers out there, we're trying to get everyone involved. And
right.
speaking of that, what do you and I know you've done it, and we'll talk, if it's okay, we'll talk maybe more of your experiences in a school program, being public school and college. What do you do to get people, and then we'll talk about it in the adult world, is what I mean. What do you do to get folks to be involved with a band program and to kind of participate? And for example, you can use exactly what you just said. You're seeing prime people in high school playing, and then they're coming to college. What do you do to get them to be involved, if I may
Uh,
ask?
oh my. Well, first of all, to build a high school program, you need a feeder system,
Hmm.
a really strong elementary and middle school program, in order to generate the kind of players that you want in the high school
Hmm.
band. Now, scheduling in high school knocks a lot of students out, which to me, that's just an administrative problem.
Yeah, right.
The administrators haven't figured out good scheduling to make music survive and
Yep.
be uh, really, really vibrant
Yeah.
at the high school level.
Yeah.
Uh, and then when you're at the college level, you're drawing from those high school programs.
Yep.
Uh, and the recruiting process is constant. I
Yeah.
mean, you're always trying to get students A to come to your particular university or college, and you're trying to find musicians. I always call it fishing for musicians, uh, and it's a constant task
Yep.
to try to find these students that, and then to encourage them to play for 4 more years
Yeah,
after
right.
high school experience. If you get them past the 4 years, then it's amazing how those students
Mhm.
oftentimes join community organizations.
Yeah. Well, and I know that. I know some of the, folks that were in your college group and, at Marist have continued to play,
Yeah,
and are in your community, grew up in
right.
Albany, and a few of them actually come and play in our groups, that I've been running because, and it's
Yeah,
amazing to see that. And that's what and you might not know this, but I just thought I'd ask, just to see if you had any perceptions on it. What do you think that engagement is? To get them that they're continuing. I mean, goodness gracious, they haven't stopped, because what I'm getting at is kind of my passion that I've been kind of after is, you go through school, you start in elementary, go in maybe middle school or junior high, depending on what school district you're at, and then you go to high school, and then you have some fall off, right? Because some go to college and they just don't complete or continue playing an instrument, we're saying.
right,
And then the same thing happens after college, because everybody's kind of housed in that institution. And nothing against the institutions. That's not what this conversation's about. It's rather than to keep them lifelong learning, making music. You
right.
know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
was just wondering, do you have any perceptions with that as far
I
as?
do. I think that you got to work hard to make music an innate part of the individual's persona.
Okay.
And, the longer you can convince them to continue,
Mhm.
the more embedded music becomes in their persona.
Okay.
Um, you take an elementary student, you get them to middle school. Well, that's been a step. You go from
Mhm.
middle school to high school. You go from high school to college. And after, let's say, uh, maybe 12 years of the trumpet being in a very important part to a person, uh, that should continue and oftentimes does. Uh, it's amazing. There's uh, a young woman up in the Albany band.
Mhm.
Uh, that she is an architect,
Okay.
and you'll find that doctors and lawyers and people that are in significant positions in life,
Right.
certain that Thursday night or Wednesday night or whatever
Hmm.
is a chance for them to get away from the burdens of their employment and just sit down and enjoy what they've enjoyed earlier in their life, and that's playing an instrument. It's relaxing. It also develops a community of friends.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a relationship building uh, conduit.
Yeah, and I know, and it's something to be said about that. I mean, it's goodness gracious, and I mean, I'm not, like I said, trying to be smart here either and saying this either, but it's like I met you through different band organizations and
Right.
through, that, and it's like, would our paths have crossed? You know what I mean? Like those kind
Yeah.
of things, just
Right.
because, and you become that different communities, and it's the release of it, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think one that I'll share really quickly. I've shared a couple times on this podcast was I had a triage nurse who she was a clarinetist. And I mean, I'm not, I couldn't imagine what she sees in a day. And then she comes and plays her clarinet as a way to unhook,
Yeah.
and that's,
Yeah.
and that's, that's something I wanted to kind of ask you, like, what do you do as a conductor, especially now with your community band? What do you do with those folks to kind of help them on that journey when they're coming to you on that Thursday night or whenever night it is, to, two things, obviously, further their music education, right? Because we're doing there, but then
Right.
also get that engagement and that release.
Um, you have to provide them with success. Otherwise, they have to feel good about the organization. They have to feel good about what they're doing. And a lot of that is the conductor's behavior on the podium,
Mm-hmm.
how you relate to the organization. And I guess my approach has always been be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to be somebody that you're not, and engage and let those people know that it's not my band,
Mm-hmm.
but rather that it's our band.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm always amazed at the how important it is for them to be in their chair on a Thursday, or actually it's a Wednesday night that we rehearse.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, but the dedication
Mm-hmm.
is to me is amazing. Like
Yeah.
seats are filled for every rehearsal, which means that they enjoy being there.
Right.
Because if they didn't enjoy it, they'd be someplace else.
Yeah, and I know, and it's something to say about that because I always think of like when you have a concert come up or or you're needed to play a performance, it's like how quick you can change your schedule or you find ways to change things so you can be involved because you have
Oh
that
yeah,
dedication, right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's like that's what fascinates me because, essentially not to say this the wrong way, but it's like you want them there, you need them to be there, you need the group to be there, but it's like
Oh
you
yeah,
have this ownership to
yeah.
it where it's like when the band performs, you want them to be there so that they can make music and it can sound the best it can.
Right. And they want to be there.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's fascinating to me because it's just like I keep looking at that because I try to find that engagement. So
Yeah.
what some things to think about as you're kind of in the and this could be in college too, because I know you've done many years of college, too. But how do you find yourself helping these folks with their journey? And the reason why I'm saying this is just because I know at your time at Marist, it's not a music school, and it's more of the students are there because they want to be there, that they want to be still playing in band. And to me, I know it's the same, but it's obviously a little bit different in the adult world too. But they continue to be there. And I was just wondering what strategies you might think about or you kind of push in there to, keep them involved with it as they're going through. So in other words, either, like I said, you could go either way with it, thinking either at Marist what you've done, or even in the colony,
Right.
community
Well,
band. So
I think in both cases, you have to let them know that you care about them as a person.
Mhm.
I always say that music is a conduit to developing positive relationships.
Mhm.
And if you work at developing positive relationships, uh, then you're helping them journey through life.
Very well said. I mean, definitely. And the only reason why I said that, just one thing that comes to my mind, just because, like I said, we obviously worked together for a little bit. The one thing I still remember, I forget what the actual saying was, but I still remember when somebody wanted to leave band, you wanted to have a conversation with them, because you wanted to talk to them about that, because you wanted to discuss their importance of being in the ensemble,
Right.
right? And and you did that a lot, and I know you're still doing that, but it's the fact that I experienced that, where they'd go in with you and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to stick around, that kind of thing. And I forget what you said to me one time. It was like you're like a washer salesman for music or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could just talk about it all day and get people involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, when they had my last concert and they had a reception afterwards, there was
Mhm.
a fellow by the name of John Savare
Mhm.
who said that what what hooked him into staying with the band was my organizational skills,
Mhm.
um, my passion for what I was doing,
Mhm.
and ultimately that I was focused on a mission.
Mhm.
And so I think if you give them those three things, uh, they'll cling to the process.
To the process, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, it's that's definite. I know, and I feel like, as you're saying that, not to lump it all into one thing, it's that side of connection that I think you're inducing here. I mean, you're showing them that you can do this art, and it's much more than that. And I know, some people, and again, I don't want to say it's the wrong way. Some people say, "Well, I do it for music's sake," and I agree. We do it for making music and pouring that creativity and the art of
right,
music. I agree with that, but I think there's much more to it than just that, because I think
right.
it's with who you're doing it with,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
if you
yeah,
think about it that way, just because, I know you want to, just as you said, it's like you wanted to be in these different groups along your path as you're moving forward, and you wanted to instill that into others.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I might add that
Yeah, sure.
in my um, quest for music history,
Yeah,
band
yeah.
history,
hmm
uh, it's lent me to have some nice guest conducting experiences.
hmm
Um, for example, I've guest conducted the Ringgold Band. I've guest conducted the Allentown Band. I've guest conducted
hmm
the Repaz Band, which is either the first or second oldest band in America,
Right.
depending on who you talk to or what statistics you cling to.
hmm
Uh, I've had a chance to guest conduct the West Point Band. I've had a chance to
hmm
conduct the United States Army Field Band. Uh, I'm certainly missing there's a concert band out in Saginaw, Michigan called the Edie
hmm
Concert Band. I had
Yeah.
a chance to guest conduct out there. Um, I got involved with the Colony Band up in Albany through a guest conducting experience
Oh, wow.
uh, back in 2007. Uh, so I guess what I'm trying to say, and
hmm
that this thing evolves.
hmm Yep.
Life in bands evolves. From sitting on a bench when I was 2 years old to being able to experience. Um, these wonderful opportunities that have been granted to me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think the experiences are amazing too. Like, and I didn't even know how you got involved with the Colony Band, and I know you've also pushed people to kind of, perform. And what I mean by that is like, obviously you took that group to Carnegie Hall, and I know you did your Carnegie Hall concert,
right.
and it's like I think it's the, and I don't know if you want to allude to this. I know you did a little bit. I think it's your drive too. I mean, you've always pushed everyone to be successful and to make music and be challenged, but also I think if I remember the first time, and I'm just going to say it this way, when I first started working with you, you're like, and I don't want to quote this the wrong way, but you said to me, some of these students might not play all the notes right, but it's more about they put the feeling into the music.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what I think you always grabbed onto.
Get past the notes and make music.
hmm
Yeah,
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 and I think that's like kind of, kind of the importance of that,
yeah.
just kind of seeing that. So, but then let me ask you this, and then we'll kind of wrap this up here in a second. But
Okay.
as you're moving forward, and and I'm not trying to be coy here and saying anything, but as and I know you're at the retirement stage, and I know you're retiring and stuff like that. But what are you still interested, if I may ask, and maybe it's maybe there's nothing in the back of your mind. Maybe there is. Who knows? What is the next like challenge that you're still pushing on to? Because you're still the conductor of the Colony
Yeah,
Band that you're still grappling with to get them do it. If I may ask.
yeah. I'm still working with the Colony Band, and I will continue that until it makes sense that I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
physically,
Right.
health wise, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because conducting on the podium, it's more than meets the eye. You don't
Yeah, right.
standing up there waving your arms. Uh, you got to have ears that are working,
Yep.
and
hmm
sometimes through all the drumming that I've done in my life and the being in percussion sections of marching bands and concert bands, the hearing starts going.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Uh,
Understand.
but I still, want to get involved with conferences,
Okay.
um, uh, and band research.
hmm
There's one composer that I've been collecting research on for a long time, and I want to try to solidify that into a little pamphlet or a booklet.
Yeah.
I think it's an important story about James Opie Brokenshire,
Oh, okay.
J.O. Brokenshire.
Okay.
Uh, his famous march was "Glory of the Trumpets," and
Okay.
but he wrote so many other things,
Yeah.
and actually spent more than 50 years associated with the United States Army.
hmm
Uh, Actually, at one time was the bandmaster of Custer's 7th Cavalry Band
Okay.
after the Little Bighorn, not before. But the band that of the 7th Cavalry will always be known as Custer's Band.
hmm
And James Obie Brokenshire was actually he was the bandmaster when the band uh, appeared at the Wounded Knee massacre,
Okay.
uh,
hmm
which was an infamous time in our history.
Yep.
Uh, but the history of him being in that position uh, goes way back to that point in time.
Yeah.
He was involved with the Army up until 1938 when he passed away.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, no, and I just asking just because I,
yeah,
I I always like to hear because only reason why, I know, and I want to say this the wrong way, but it's like I know you that you're always still contributing to music regardless.
yeah,
I know you're retiring out, from the college world, but it doesn't mean that you're retiring from music, and that's the
right.
reason, I'm asking that question just
Yeah,
because that's the
I,
lifelong learning piece.
you got to keep engaged.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's big to say something like that. Engagement is kind of the big one.
Yeah,
So as we're wrapping this up, I do have a one, kind of last question. I ask a lot of my, podcast members that come on here about this. I just want to get your opinion of people, who've made music before, or maybe who have not made music before, um, and they're not doing it right now. You know what I mean? And maybe, I've heard the stories of, school. I did it in school, and then, well, you get out and you get a job and you get a family and you get a responsibilities of a house and so on and so forth. And I agree, we all have that. But we get away from it quite a bit. And then, there might be an interest, or they might see it, and they might be wondering to get back into it, or, even one that maybe they're, oh yeah, I used to do that in music. I used to do music, and I hear that a
Right.
lot. I mean, what is your thoughts about that if somebody was either kind of interested in it, or, or talking about it, if you were talking to somebody, what would you say to somebody, to kind of get them back into the world of music making?
No, I'd say and I've said this, it's just like riding a bicycle.
Mhm.
You hop back on it and have some fun with it. You spent so much time learning the craft, uh, and you're past raising, young ones, and
Mhm.
you have a house, and you're stable. Get back to something that you enjoyed doing in the past part of your life. We have several community band members that have done that. Some have left their instruments for 10 or 15 years
Yep.
and pick it up and uh, have some more fun with it.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, and the reason why I said that, I love the bicycle. I actually use that all the time too. It's like, you can even go and saying you get back on it. If you fall, that's okay. You get
Right.
back up and you just keep going. And
Yeah.
before you know it, it'll come back so much quicker,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because you'll remember. And believe it or not, that muscle memory, and,
It
you're
comes back.
it does come back. So
Yeah.
very well said, and
Yeah.
because I'm always influencing others to trying to get out, there and play their instruments or sing or whatever they've done prior to this. Not that
Right.
singing's not an instrument, it is.
Right.
But well, thank you, Art. I really appreciate it. I thank you for being on this podcast. I know we've had many encounters and just talking about band history and talking about
Right.
music education and this kind of lifelong learning thing. And so I appreciate hearing your voice. I've kind of started this to get people to hear about this and hear what other people say about making music, because just like you, it's like it'll come back, but I want to see it keep thriving in the music
Yeah.
making world,
Yeah.
so, and I also want to say, I want to thank you, I mean, for your years of service, my goodness. And I mean, I know, I mean, goodness gracious, I don't want to say this the wrong, I know you've been involved for 70 plus years or so, with that. And then you're involved with college for, what'd you say, 38 years. And,
Yeah.
you taught public school before that. So thank you for all those years of service and helping others. And I know you're at the retirement stage, but, do know, and I know you know this already, but I can't wait to see what you're going to do next, because I know you're going to keep pushing it forward and keep going, because because I know you, especially with a community band. So good luck with that. And I just wanted to say that, and thank you, and also thank you for all the stuff you've given me over the years and will continue to give me. I know that.
Yeah.
so
All right.
so thank you for all of that. But anyway, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for being you.
Yeah, well,
Thanks for
thank
doing
you.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, well, I just trying to thrive others to get out there and make music, and whether or not I'm hoping people will watch.
Yeah.
Whether or not it'll happen, we'll see.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you so much, Art.
All right, Josh. You take care.